The Consulting Success podcast is powered by the Clarity Coaching Program. If you'd like to work directly with the Consulting Success team and receive personal coaching and support to optimize and grow your consulting business, marketing, and revenue, visit consultingsuccess.com to find out more and apply.
Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business.
Hey everyone, it's Michael Zapersky here, and welcome back to another episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. Today, I'm very excited, in fact, thrilled to have Jack Milroy joining us. Jack, welcome.
Hey, Michael. Great to be here. Thanks.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I'm thrilled. I don't say that very often, but I've just always enjoyed our conversations and seeing how your business has evolved and grown over the years. So for those who aren't familiar with your work, Jack, to quickly fill everyone in, Jack is the managing director of Defiance, where they work with movements, helping them to raise money and build power online. More specifically, they work with unions, political parties, and advocacy organizations to level up their digital fundraising and activate their supporters. Some of their clients include the United Workers Union, the New Democratic Party of BC, also known as NDP, International Association of Firefighters, and 350.org, as well as many more. And you've worked as a strategist, leading progressive organizations around the world. So really excited to dive into this conversation today, Jack, and we're going to cover a lot. But before we get into all the consulting and business building and positioning and pricing and everything that people are here for, let's start off with the history. Take me back to the early chapters of Jack Milroy. Where did you grow up? What was that environment like? And what were you doing before you got into the business that you're in today?
Yeah, so I'm Australian, and I grew up in Newcastle, Australia, which is about 2 hours north of Sydney, and a kind of mid-sized industrial city. Great place to live, great beaches. I went to university there, and I got my law degree there. And from there, I didn't ever actually practice law. I went straight into working on campaigns and working for unions. But throughout my life, I've lived between Australia and where you are, Michael, in Vancouver, in Canada. So I've gone back and forth between the two over the years.
I did not know that you have a law degree or that you ever entertained being a lawyer. So this is new information for me. What do you remember why you decided to go away from the path of law? Yeah,
I think I knew about halfway through the degree that it wasn't something I wanted to kind of practice in day to day. The day-to-day practice of law is, some people absolutely love that. But for me, it just didn't feel like it was for me. Yeah. And so, I finished it off because I wanted to finish the degree. It's a good thing to have. And I still draw on it today, but it wasn't something I wanted to do each and every day. I kind of was more interested in working on campaigns and working on advocacy efforts and doing, I did some government relations stuff early on. So the law degree was definitely helpful. But the day-to-day legal practice wasn't something for me, even though a lot of my friends do that now. And I ask them questions constantly and get that free help.
It's always nice to have a friend who's a lawyer, right? Yeah. Or two or three. And where does the interest in politics, fundraising, advocacy, where does that come from?
Yeah, I've been interested in politics since I was young, since I was a early teenager, probably. I ran for everything I could in school and in university, was involved in student politics and stuff like that. One of my first kind of jobs after I finished high school was working for my local member of parliament in her office. And that gave me a really good insight into how laws are made and how parliament works and how politics works. So, I've been involved in that stuff for quite a long time, and it's just stuck with me. It's something I really care deeply about and passionate about, and, it'll always be part of my life. And I'm really kind of grateful that I've been able to build a business around that keeps me working in that field while also being my own boss and building my own thing at the same time.
It's really interesting. I mean, the area of politics, I think many consultants, especially when they're running either a solo consultancy or a small firm, don't necessarily feel that politics impacts them. I mean, aside from having your taxes raised, which is something that kind of inevitably seems to happen to everybody these days, how do you feel politics impacts business? And I guess another way to look at it, or another way to kind of position my question would be, in your years of being exposed to politics and advocacy and this kind of general area of work, Is there anything that you've learned from that, or anything that you've seen in terms of how people hold power or rally a movement around them that you feel applies to the solo or small consulting firm owner?
Yeah. So the two questions in there. So why politics matter to business owners? Well, it matters a lot, right? Because politics is ultimately what determines the society that we live in, right? And, if you care about, the environment, or you have concerns around climate change and, stuff like that, that's ultimately going to impact a lot of businesses in a lot of different ways. Some businesses more than other in really detrimental ways. So that's one way, for example, that politics really, really matters. The pandemic that we've kind of been through and are going through, right? How we respond in public health, how strong our systems are. That's something that's impacted businesses. It's made an impact on how long businesses can stay open. If we've been able to control COVID in this country, in Australia, we controlled COVID really well for a couple of years. And as a result, our economy was booming this entire time, where other places in the world were shut down and we're dealing with high infection rates. So business really is, downstream of politics. And so if you don't take an interest in it, doesn't mean it's not going to take an interest in you. So that's one way I would say that matters to business owners. The other thing, what can we learn as business owners from political movements? It's a really good question. And I actually spend a lot of my time thinking about it in the opposite way, which is because I came up through politics and through movements. I'm like, well, what can I learn from the business right. side of things? Because it's not where I come from. It's not my background. I didn't study it. I didn't have, a kind of a business focused family. So I actually learned a lot the other way. But I do think that what business owners can learn from politics is a lot around messaging, having a really clear and strong message, whether that's kind of like, your own services and what you offer and your marketing, or whether it's around your values and really having a strong set of values and core values that you talk about. And one thing people get frustrated with politicians is they say the same things over and over, and it's just the same lines over and over. And it's because you have to say something 8 to 10 times before someone will actually hear it and understand it. And I think that's something that businesses can learn from politics, is picking really clear, strong line statements of values and then repeating them so that your customer base really comes to understand them.
I think there's a really powerful lesson in there that probably most people can apply. Very often, people aren't clear on their messaging. They're a bit wishy-washy. They're trying to go after too large of an audience. But when you really look at politics, and very often I know people reference what happens in the United States, right, in the US, and whichever side you feel more aligned with, they both sides always typically have a very clear message, and one might win out over the other, but it's that strong message that is repeated over and over again, and not trying to speak to everybody, but trying to speak to a certain group of people tends to help win out. So I think that's a great message for everybody joining in. So let's go back in time. So you went through your law degree, you started to get more involved in working different kind of advocacy groups and political groups and so forth. You started Defiance in 2017. What were you doing just before you started your consulting business? Yeah,
I was living in Vancouver at the time, and I was working for a political party directly as their director of engagement. So I was working at Vision Vancouver, which is a political party that at the time, the mayor was a member of Vision Vancouver, and the city council had a majority of Vision members. So we were kind of the party in power at that time. And I worked for Vision for a couple of years as director of engagement, kind of doing community outreach, stakeholder relations, building our volunteer network, stuff like that. And it was a great job with lots of really, really awesome people. And then when that kind of finished up, so one of the things about working in politics is it's very cyclical, right? Not too many gigs go for more than, 2 or 3 years, because that's how election cycles work. So you get very used to moving on to the next thing. This is very common in the US, where they have elections like every year. It's a little less common in Australia and Canada, but it still happens. And so that was finishing up, and, I'd been through this cycle a few times, and would jump to the next role and then see that through to the election, jump to the next role. And I kind of didn't want to do that anymore. I was kind of a bit burnt out on that. And previously to that role, I'd actually taken a bit of a detour from politics and worked in tech for a while. I worked for a political and civic tech startup called Nation Builder that is based out of LA. And so I spent some time in LA working at that startup. And so when I was looking to finish up in 2017, someone from that startup called me and said, hey, we've got this customer that's using our product as a SaaS product, and they really need some help. Would you be open to doing a contract, doing some freelancing with them? And that was the Firefighters Union in Ontario, the IAFF. And I said, well, yeah, sure. And that was kind of my first contract. That was the first thing that came to me as a consultant. And really, I bet was able to build everything over time around them. And, I worked with them for 2 or 3 years as a real anchor client, and they were fantastic. So it kind of came to me by happenstance, and I'm really grateful that it worked that way. And then, of course, I had to transition into actually going and getting work myself.
Sure. So you got that first client really through a referral introduction. What about the next 2 or 3 clients? Where do they come from? Was it also just word of mouth and expanding kind of that referral base, or were you in proactive marketing, sales, need to get out there and bring in new clients mode? How did that kind of come together?
Yeah, it was kind of a mixture of both. So there were none have come so easily as that first one ever has, which was fantastic. They were ready to work with someone and I was ready to work. So that was great. Since the next couple after that, I'd say were within my network, within my professional network. So folks that I knew, or, people friends of friends, or I'd worked with, but I still went and said, hey, I'm doing this work. I'd like to talk to you about it. So it wasn't kind of marketing in the sense of, building a funnel or anything like that. That kind of happened later. In those early days, it was just trying to have conversations with folks that were in my network.
Right. And during that time, what did you find to be most challenging? Like looking back the first few years of being in business, what really concerned you most, or was the toughest for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm trying not to confuse it with what's the toughest for me now. Look, I think at the time it was, looking back now, I worked too much probably for not high enough fees. And so at the time, I think I felt that. I felt like I'm not bringing in anywhere near as much revenue as I was when I was an employee. And yet I have the full responsibility of this, kind of business, fledgling business. So that was the hard thing for me. And really getting leads, finding folks who were ready to go ahead and to engage me, that took a lot of time. And reflecting back, I actually think that's because I wasn't clear about what I offered. I wasn't clear about what I could do for them and what the benefits were, looking back now. But at the time, I didn't know that.
For sure. I want to dive deeper into how your pricing strategy has evolved over time. But before that, let's talk about how your offerings have shifted. And, before hitting the record button, you mentioned kind of some of the things that you've been working through. Kind of break down for us, what did things look like before when it comes to your offerings? And because very often, this is a challenge that so many consultants find themselves in, where they could offer a lot of things to a lot of different people. So walk us through, what did the before look like of your offerings? And then we'll kind of step through this together.
Yeah, to be quite honest, like at the beginning, I didn't have a set offering. I had a general area in which I kind of practiced, excuse me, but I didn't have a set number of offers of things that I would roll out and do for folks. So for example, I work in a field in politics and in advocacy and unions where at that time, organizations were not at what I would call digital maturity, right? They didn't have strong digital systems in place. There was a lot of stuff was done ad hoc. Folks didn't have a lot of internal capacity to implement new software products or new approaches. So I was to be honest, I was kind of a smart guy who knew about digital stuff and could help you if you had a problem with like digital stuff, which of course is incredibly squishy and doesn't really attract people, right? So I would do all sorts of different things. So it may be from, writing emails to their list. I may be running an entire campaign, including landing pages, your petitions, texting their supporter list, getting people to take action. I could hold the whole campaign, or I would just give some advice on strategy for a campaign that folks wanted to run. So it was very broad. And I think I put the onus a lot on people to tell me what they wanted me to do, rather than me coming to them and saying, here's what I can do for you.
While we work with a lot of seasoned and experienced consultants here at Consulting Success, I'm often contacted by new early stage consultants. Invariably, the question I'm asked is, what are the steps I should take to become a successful consultant and grow my consulting business to my first 6 figures per year? Well, I'm excited to announce that we've opened the doors for our Momentum program. This is our most popular program for early stage consultants, and it has helped almost 1,000 consultants to start, run, and grow successful consulting businesses. It gives you the step-by-step plan to help you with your messaging, your fees, and pricing strategies, how to win more proposals, how to go to market more effectively, developing a marketing system to generate leads consistently, and so much more. And right now, until September the 19th,
you can sign up for Momentum and get 50% off the regular price by going to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO. Only 100 spots are available to join Momentum and get 50% off. This deal is only available until September the 19th or until all 100 spots are gone. We won't be opening up new spots in this program for several months, so don't wait. Go to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO. So it sounded like it was very custom in the early days.
Yeah, totally.
What were the challenges that you found when you were doing so much custom work? What were some of the issues or points of resistance that were coming up for you?
Yeah, some of the challenges were that every time I would need to kind of put a proposal together for someone, it would take a huge amount of time because I'd be reinventing the wheel every single time. I'd be writing a custom proposal document. I'd have to be thinking through, how much work is this for me, really? I mean, how much should I charge for this? I don't really know. I got away from hourly billing really, really early on, even before I started working with you and the consulting success team. But that still didn't really help me, right? Because I didn't have structured pricing in place. So I'd have to think of pricing every time. And then when it came to implementation, doing the work for clients, I wasn't getting any efficiencies of scale because I was never repeating the same process over and over. So things would take longer.
Yeah. And then so now if we kind of fast forward from you doing a lot of custom work, the more kind of recent version was you had set offerings, but you had more than one set offering. Can you kind of talk a little bit about what that looked like in the most recent, so not where you are today, but just before that, what did things look like at that point?
Yeah. So in kind of if I think about my work as in three phases, there's that initial phase where everything was custom and I was kind of a contractor. Then the next phase that we're talking about is kind of, I thought of myself as a freelancer, and I worked with multiple clients at a time, and I had a little more specificity around my offers, but they were in a range of different areas. So I developed a bit of a fundraising specialty where I could do digital fundraising for folks, but then I also had some stuff around internal development and change management around digital processes and technology for progressive organizations. And, I had a few different streams, and the challenges for that, one of the upsides to that was, I had more clarity than before, and I was able to provide more clarity to potential clients, and I was maybe able to attract a broader range, but I'd say that it was outweighed by the difficulties, which really became evident when I was working on my website and trying to put a very clear message on what I do it for. And I had a couple of different things I did. And you can't really put that on a page. Like when you're in the back end of Squarespace and you have to write it out and you have to say it, you end up looking like you're trying to do everything, even though you feel like you aren't. So that I really ran into problems with, I would say, marketing, with having too many offers. That's what I would say was the main challenge, was around marketing and being really clear on what I did.
And so talk me through, so that was kind of chapter 2. If we look now at chapter 3, which is taking us to current day, what does your offering look like now? Yeah,
my offering now is wholly related to raising money and building power online. So I have a standard set of 3 offers where there's kind of an investment on the lower end, which gets folks strategy, custom written strategy for them that they can then take and implement themselves. My second offer is around, you get that strategy, but you also get my guidance on an ongoing basis for 3 or 6 months, coaching one-on-one your staff and helping you implement that strategy. So I'm not doing it for you, but I'm helping you do it and making sure you stick to best practice. And then the third offer is really the full service offer where me and my team will actually do this for you. So if you don't have anyone in-house, so for example, if the political party doesn't have a digital fundraiser or a digital team in-house, we will kind of take over their email client, we'll take over their properties, and we will run it for them completely. So those are the 3 main offers. And I also have, on top of that, as kind of an introductory or a discovery offer, I have an assessment tool, basically, where folks for an even lower level of investment, kind of an entry level investment, can get a snapshot from me of where they're at and some recommendations for where they might go next. So there's the 3 main service offerings, and then sometimes a discovery.
Right. And as you've made that shift to ultimately really narrow in and say, okay, this is the circle that I'm going to play in, and here's the very specific ways that I can engage. And I know these work. I've done them for others. I can create great results and value. Setting your pricing around that. What have you seen? What have you experienced in terms of your mindset, in terms of marketing results? Just kind of walk us through what are the benefits that you've experienced since narrowing in on that. Yeah,
I was thinking about this earlier, and before I talk about the kind of practical benefits for the business, the benefits to myself and my own mindset have been huge. I don't think I realized how scattered I had been feeling for the years before, when I was trying to offer too many services, serve too many people, be too many things to too many people. I don't think I really realized until I narrowed things down how much of a drain that is on you. That's a real drain. And now that I've really narrowed in and focused on a service offering, on an area that I'm really passionate about, it also gives me space to spend more time learning about that, becoming a better expert at it, getting better at it. Whereas before, it felt like there was too many things going on that I couldn't spend time doing that. So for my mindset, it's been huge. It's also given me a huge amount of confidence when I speak to folks about what I do, because I just can be very clear about what I do and what I don't do. And I think that for a lot of consultants, and this was the case for me, what you don't do is really hard because you're worried about losing people. You're worried about, if someone says, oh, actually, can you build me a website? No, I can't build you a website. I can definitely refer you to someone who's great, but that's just not what I do. And now I'm comfortable saying that. So that's been kind of my mindset shift. And then on the business side, I always found it really hard to do marketing before, when I was in kind of chapter 1 and chapter 2, when things weren't as clear and messaging was a bit more squishy. Whereas now it feels like that's been unlocked. Now I can have a really clear, from my email list, for example, I can have a really clear welcome series when someone signs up on my website that, is 3 emails that tells them exactly what we do at Defiance. Whereas before I had to kind of hedge a little bit and keep that broad. Now I can be really focused about it. And if someone isn't looking for that, they can unsubscribe. Well, that's a lot more authentic to the audience as well, I think. So The biggest benefit has been in marketing and in having those structured offers and pricing.
And as you've gone through those chapters, chapter 1, chapter 2, and now today, chapter 3, has there been any shifts around your pricing strategy and how you kind of think about your pricing?
Yeah, there has. My pricing now is more set. It's more static. I don't have to price every project anymore, which was something I was doing before. And I think when you price every project, you're essentially, you end up in the position where you're negotiating with yourself every time. And you're negotiating yourself down, quite honestly, because no consultant sits at their proposal document, and they get to the end and they've got the price line and they write it in and they delete and they put it back. We all know how that works, right? And you knock it down a bit and then you bump it up a bit. And I think at the end, you always come in lower than you intended when you started. There's something about us that we undersell ourselves. When you have set pricing and when you review your pricing every quarter or something like that, it's not to say your pricing never changes, but you say, well, this is what I'm going to run with for the next few months. You're not going through that process all the time. So you're not undervaluing and you're not underselling yourself. And I think that's really important for, early stage and kind of people who are just coming out of early stage consulting, which is, I think, where I am, is to make sure you don't lock yourself in at a fee rate that doesn't give you any room or any margin to be able to reinvest back into the business so you can grow the business. Otherwise, you just end up becoming a freelancer again.
Yeah. I'd love to get more into that. But before we do that, one other thing that you've also developed more recently is the Defiance digital action model. I believe that's what it's called, digital action model.
Yeah.
Why did you do that? Why did you create this model, and how has it helped you to have kind of a model and framework and image defined?
Yeah, I created that based on, the Defiance action model, digital action model, is really my take or my approach based on my years of kind of experience and working in the field on kind of the core elements of what makes a good digital fundraising strategy or digital engagement strategy. And I think it can be applied across different industries. So it works for my union clients, it works for my political clients, my advocacy clients. And it gives people kind of a reference point to, okay, what are there's 5 elements here. What are the 5 key things I should be focused on? And, what comes underneath them? So, that's up on the website. People can have a look. And then of course, there's more underneath that I get into with clients. What I really wanted to do was, again, I wanted to stop reinventing the wheel every time I was having conversations with folks. I wanted to put something down and lay a marker down and say, this is what I believe, this is what I think is important at this point in time. And it will evolve over time like everything does. But it's given me a structure to approach my work and to approach engagements with clients and say, okay, here's the areas we need to hit. Here's where you're doing really well. Here's where you're maybe not doing so well. And here's some things you can do to improve in this area. So it really just provides a structure for my work and for my clients to understand kind of where they're at.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I mean, we've definitely also found developing like a consulting success framework and having a visual around that, and just as a way internally to think about it and to think about how we structure content or trainings or materials and best practices, but also as a way to have more structured and valuable conversations with confidence with clients and buyers to be really helpful. The other thing, Jack, that I've noticed with, over time is you have a real focus around kind of balancing, like building the business while also being, a present father and family man. What kind of lessons have you learned, or how do you think about those two things together for others who might be in a situation where they're being pulled in one direction or the other a lot?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had conversations about this because we both have young kids, right? And it can be really challenging, like, to be honest. And, I don't think the last 2 years have made it any easier. Like, it's been a rough 2 years for everyone. Maybe those of us who are used to working at home with an empty house suddenly got used to working from home without an empty house. So it's been challenging. So I would say the way that I think about it is I think about kind of back to first principles. Why am I doing this? Why am I building this business? Why don't I just go get a job somewhere? And the answer is because I want a type of lifestyle that means I can be present for my family. It means I can do the things I want for myself and with my family and still, build a business, have a career, generate income as we need to do. And so if I was to allow the business to completely take over the family time for myself, with my wife, etc., then I'd be kind of betraying the whole reason I was doing this in the first place. And I may as well go get a job with, structured hours and with vacation and, superannuation / pension. I may as well do that. So I kind of have to keep checking in with myself and saying, well, the reason I'm doing this is because I'm trying to build a life that includes my business, my family, myself. And if I start straying away from that too much, I think, well, this is the reason I'm doing this,
Yeah, I think that why is so important. And I've seen it come back for so many clients over the years where at times you can lose the bullseye of the why. And then when you get into different situations, whether it's not doing your marketing or, not doing something in your business that you should be doing or spending too much time on something that you shouldn't be, always getting back to the why is so helpful in kind of creating that clarity or bringing you back to center. So I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah. Over the last 12 months, Jack, has there been anything that you've been working on that you just feel has been a real big win? I mean, aside from you talk about this shift in offerings that you've worked through, which is obviously a really big one. Is there anything else that you've learned or anything else that you just feel like, wow, this has been this has had a big impact on the business or on me as a business owner? Yeah,
look, aside from the specialization and then allowing to narrow down the offers, I would say the biggest thing that I'm moving into now is getting some help and building my internal team, right? And not trying to do everything myself. So, I'm at the point now where I have a couple of contractors who work for me, whether it's on kind of administration support, on helping with my marketing and automating a bunch of my marketing work. And that's previously stuff that I would have done myself. I would have just I would have taken the time, and it's a significant chunk of time, right? Because that's not what I'm a professional in. I think sometimes people think things like, market administration, for example, is like something that anyone can do. And so why would I pay someone to do that? Well, it's actually a specialty. It's actually some people are really good at it and have done it a lot. And that's not me. So technically I can do the things that, my VA does, but she does them better and faster than I would do them. So why wouldn't I have an expert help me with that? The same way I have an expert helping me with my marketing, my accounting, my legal, right?
Do you remember a point in time where that clicked for you? Did you always feel that way? Or is it just something that's become a realization at some point where you said, yeah, I should not be doing this any longer. I need to stop doing this. What was that transition point for you, or that point of shift?
I think, I'm smiling because I think it happened midway through last year. And I was going through receipts or something to send to my bookkeeper on, I'm trying to find Amazon receipts. For anyone who uses Amazon, they annoyingly don't send you an email email receipt when you purchase something, and you have to log in to Amazon to get your receipt. It's really annoying, and Amazon should fix that if you're listening. I was like, why am I doing this? It's taking me a lot of time. And in this time, I could be talking to a client. I could be having outreach to, someone that I really want to work with. I could be writing an email to my list, all of these things. Why am I doing this? Like, I just had why am I doing this? This is really frustrating. And from there, I spoke to some other folks in the consulting success community around how they've got some outside help. And, I took it from there. And it's stop start, right? Sometimes you work with a few folks, you have to find the right fit. It's not always like from day one, everything's great. You have to work on this stuff. But, I kind of stuck with it and I've got to a good place now. But yeah, really just wanting to free up time to do the generation of business. And honestly, free up time to do other things. Like, I like to cycle. I maybe want to go for a bike ride instead of going through Amazon receipts.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty good, thing to be doing. So if you look at your productivity, your performance, what you feel contributes most to the success that you have on a regular basis, what are one or two things that you typically do, a habit that you feel really has a big impact on that performance and productivity?
Yeah, look, I think the number one thing is physical activity and exercise for me. I've noticed in my life, at periods where I've, like many of us, struggled with, my mental health, with, feeling pressure and stuff like that. It's physical activity and exercise that really helps pull me out of that. And maintaining that like baseline of, exercising 5 or 6 times a week, I find makes me really productive. It also gives me an incentive to kind of get done what I need to get done that day. Cause at, 3 o'clock, I got to go work out or whatever. Right. So, and that's non-negotiable. So I've got to get it done. So I found physical activity to be really, really helpful.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Although for me, I have to do it in the morning before everybody's even up. Otherwise, if it gets to 3 or 4 p.m. or whatever, and I'm, finished at the office, it's like the day for me is done. Then it's back to the family time and all that. So good for you that you can make that happen. I'm often like, oh, I'm just tired. Now it's time to, to relax, but that's good. Hey, Jack, is there anything that we haven't talked about, relating to your journey thus far in terms of things that you feel are best practices, lessons learned that might be helpful for those that are joining us right now? Yeah,
I was thinking that something that's changed for me in the last year is, I've learned to say no to things, right? And in particular, say no to requests for work that don't really align with where I want the business to go. Even if they're quite lucrative, right? Like, and that's really hard. And I, for sure, can relate to folks that say, like, I don't really want to do this work, but I don't want to turn it down because maybe in the future this client could be, a good client, XYZ. But I've learned that saying no to things that aren't within your plan, within the plan for your business and the way you want your business to go is really empowering. And once you do it once, it's a good feeling. You think, well, I can do that again. And then all of a sudden you've cleared the decks of these kind of engagements that are draining for you and maybe don't make a lot of sense for the business or don't make a lot of sense for you personally. So I would say saying no to things if they don't align with your business strategy, if they don't align with your values is another really important thing. Learning to say no can be quite hard as a new consultant, but I think it's a good skill to master early. Yeah, that's a really great one. I'm glad that you brought that up because I think even at any stage, in my experience, it doesn't matter whether you're an early stage consultant or you've been consulting for 5, 10 or 15 years, and whether you're running $100,000 a year business or $1 million or $2 or $3 or $5 million business. Like, in fact, the more quote unquote successful you become or the more established you become, you tend to even have more people or things or opportunities vying for your time and that are exciting. But that's where it actually becomes even more important to say no, because you only have so much time and you want to make sure that you're putting that time to the things that matter the most. So I appreciate you sharing that. And then 2 more questions, Jack, before wrapping up here for today. In the last 6 months, what is the best book that you have read or listened to? It could be nonfiction or fiction, but just anything that you've enjoyed in the last 6 months or so. Well, that's a great question. And I'm trying to think of the name of the book. Oh, it's called The Premonition. It's a nonfiction book. It's not business related, although I think it has some implications. I forget the name of the author, but it's the same guy that wrote Moneyball. And it's about the initial response to the COVID-19 pandemic in the United States, and particularly around the shape that government institutions were in when COVID hit in the US, and all of the failings of the system. And they weren't individual failings, they were system failures of the way that the US had set up its health system that meant the US had basically lost the battle against COVID before it even started. And what was so interesting about that was like how important the systems are that we set up around us, whether it's, government and politics or whether it's in our businesses, down to a small business, like a small consulting business. If you don't have the right frameworks in place, when a crisis hits or an opportunity arises, you won't be able to take advantage of it. So for me, I think there's a lot of lessons in that book, The Premonition.
Yeah, Michael Lewis.
Michael Lewis, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And final question, but very important, is for those that want to learn more about your work, check out your content, even connect with you, where should they go?
Yeah, they can go to defiancedigital.co. So defiancedigital.co there.
All right. We will have all that linked up. Jack, thanks so much for coming on and sharing some of your journey with us.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. For more episodes and to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, head on over to iTunes. And if you'd like to develop consistent lead flow and a highly profitable consulting business, learn more about our coaching programs at consultingsuccess.com.